You can't, Lord, resort to, Lord, some kind of executive power, authorize president to do this, Lord, do away with everything that Article 3 provides in the garb of, Lord, 356 powers. Executive and parliament in letter and spirit. If they don't do it in letter and spirit, this court will strike you down and must. It is temporary from the perspective of J&K, not temporary from the perspective of the Indian Dominion or Indian Republic. At that time, an independent state to cede to you. They agree to session on clear and...
It is a question of persuasion by...
Sorry.
It was the Raja who requested...
in my respectful submission, the treaty in question here between the erstwhile ruler and the Governor General, which ultimately, that has now been transfixed into Article 370. So, 370 is an extraordinarily unusual provision. It's never, I mean, it's something which is so beautiful that, the constitutional framers felt that how do we give, a kind of respect, kind of acceptability, kind of, validity to this, letter of accession. So they devised, as I said yesterday, it was an absolute, brilliant statesmanship on their part to bring that into constitution to assure people of Jammu and Kashmir that we mean what we say. We are not going to do away with this. So, that's why, this is very important. That treaty will have to be interpreted in the light of 370. It's now, virtually, transposed into Article 370. Our conclusion is that it would not be competent to Parliament to make a law relatable to Article 3 of the Constitution for the purpose of implementing the agreement. It is considered by learned Attorney General that this conclusion must inevitably mean that law necessary to implement the agreement has to be passed under 368. Now, concession follows the conclusion. So, it can't be said that it is on a concession. The conclusion of your lordships is very categorical that the legislative power is not possible. Only a constituent power can be exercised in respect of this. And that constituent power is under 368. So, in my respectful submission, far from President exercising the powers, and I will show why President had become functus officio. But even assuming that 373 survives, which it doesn't, in my respectful submission, even then, the power could only be exercised under the constituent power. No other way. To say, it should obtain concurrence of a substantial section of the House, which may normally mean the consent of the major parties of the House. And that is a safeguard provided by the article in matters of this kind. Please see the language. But this is the protection your lordships have extended. And I beseech your lordships to extend it further. Beseech your lordships to extend this further. That this is how you can't, resort to, some kind of executive power, authorize president to do this, do away with everything that Article 3 provides in the garb of, 356 powers. It makes complete mockery of constitutional safeguards. Because your lordship knows what majorities get to do. We have seen what happened in 1975. So this is the check. And that's why constitutionalism, your lordship's duty to the constitution, to ensure that it is upheld by the executive and parliament in letter and spirit. If they don't do it in letter and spirit, this court will strike you down and must. So these words, I now see answers to the reference which was said by the Honorable President. We would accordingly...
Study was decided at a time when explanation 1 and explanation 2 were not on the constitutional...
It came as a consequence. Your lordship said...
They came as a consequence of Berubari.
Correct.
to take into account what the court held, that the state would not include a union territory. So now really that issue will not survive, because the basis was that state will not include a union territory. And therefore, you couldn't see the territory in exercise of the lawmaking power under Article 3. You have to amend the constitution.
That's what there are two submissions on this. One, that treaty to be interpreted in the light of what constitution provides in respect of that treaty. And two, that if you want to now touch that treaty, you cannot do it by a legislative act. You have to do it in exercise of a constituent power. As I said, Lord, constitution is durable. Lord, if it served the need of the hour on that day, doesn't mean that, Lord, that need must be wished away because you have a majority. Respectful submission, the argument that what government is advancing before roaches, what does not bear out from plain reading of the constitutional provision. Now see Lord, chapter 21, the title, temporary, transitional and special provisions. Now Lord, I accept that 370 is temporary because it's titled temporary.
Yeah.
But it is temporary from the perspective of J&K, not temporary from the perspective of the Indian Dominion or Indian Republic. The choice was left to the Constituent Assembly and therefore the people of J&K to decide whether you want to continue with this status or you want to be away from India. That was the choice, and I will show that note from Mr. Iyengar's, Gopalaswamy Iyengar's plot, a very express statement before the Constituent Assembly. So what, he was chairing the committee which drafted Article 370. There were 8 members in it. And they did it because of the extraordinary situation. They realized that we are losing J&K out of our hands. Now you persuade about citizens of a state, a country, at that time an independent state, to cede to you. They agree to session on clear.
It is a question of persuasion by.
Sorry.
It was the Raja who requested the government of India that time.
I agree. No question about it. But conditions, historical conditions can't be lost sight of. Your watches are right. Raja requested, but in that letter he expressly asked for this protection. In that letter, he expressly asked for this protection. The Governor General agreed to that. And that is why the Constituent Assembly debated.
That's what Mr. Sibal argued that after 1954, this 370 has become a permanent.
Yes.
Of the Constitution.
Now just see below. Just see below 370. Lord, 370 is Lord what? Lord, first and foremost, 370 is Lord that Lord Article 371C is most important. That's first. The provisions of Article 1 and of this article shall apply in relation to that state. Meaning thereby, all other articles will not apply. That's an emphatic statement in the Constitution. Article 371C. We have to begin journey of 370 with that.